A crackdown on press freedom. This is a report by the Committee to Protect Journalists, accusing China of preventing journalists in Hong Kong and Taiwan from reporting freely. It details an increasingly constrained media environment in Hong Kong, where pro-Beijing outlets outnumber the independent ones. Pro-Beijing groups are also accused of scaring off companies from advertising with independent outlets who can be critical of China. The report says that there have been repeated and unprovoked police attacks on journalists in Hong Kong who've been covering the protests. The Committee to Protect Journalists says these are the effects of China's rising influence on a region that once had free press. Here's Sarah Clark in Hong Kong, who's obviously reported right throughout this whole process of protests in Hong Kong and has been looking at the report today. Take us through some of the conclusions of it, Sarah.
Well, as you mentioned, Kamala, this is looking at the changing media landscape in Hong Kong due to the increasing Chinese influence on those media outlets. And the overall conclusion is that it's not a positive situation for the media here. It says China's diminishing inhibitions to intervene in Hong Kong's affairs has had unfortunate consequences for journalists. It said the cause of Hong Kong's more restrictive environment is the increasing control of the large media companies which have come under mainland control or ownership or influence. It says the media outlets with the Chinese slant, they tend to get heavier investments or bigger, greater incoming funds from the Chinese companies. And it says, the author notes, it pays to be pro-China. Now, it talks about how that's translated to greater pressure on the independent media outlets, which they said are diminishing as a result simply because they're being underfunded. They say those who criticise or dare to question China are being starved of any funding, income from advertising or other finances. Now, it says the independent media who questioned, as I mentioned, the Chinese influence, there are some on the online stance or the online platform for the independent operators is certainly thriving, but it still says that the number of outlets in the independent media or journalists are diminishing as a result. Now, also a particular focus in this report is looking at the violent attacks that have been increasing in the last 6 or so months, certainly in the last 12 months, and that's been inflicted by the police and sometimes pro-China supporters. Now, we spoke to the co-author of this report, Stephen Butler, and this is what he had to say with regards to the increasing number of attacks on journalists in Hong Kong.
It's put the media up on the front line against police, and we've seen many instances of police instituting really gratuitous attacks on journalists. Journalists who are standing at the side who are tear gassed or hit with pepper spray, or in the case of one journalist who was hit by a live rubber bullet and lost her eyesight in one eye. And there's no justice for any of these. None of these cases are being investigated so far as we know. And the police are not being held to account. And so I think this has led to an increasing divide.
As for the protest movement itself, Sarah, what sort of state is that in now? Are things winding down a bit?
Well, certainly, Kamal, they're continuing, but the number of rallies are smaller and the number of people attending those rallies are also declining. We had some small confrontations on the weekend at some of those rallies, and that was between police, some protesters, as well as journalists. And this week there is a general strike called for between Tuesday and Thursday. Now, there was a general strike last week, but it actually didn't eventuate, so we're yet to see what will come of this week's strike. And I should also say that Hong Kong, the government here, has taken out a number of ads in newspapers in Australia, Europe and the United States. And it says that Hong Kong is soldiering on. It's trying to basically kind of reassure countries around the world that Hong Kong is still a good place to invest. It notes that Hong Kong is a free and open society, and it says that the Hong Kong government still respects the one country, two systems policy. Now, Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, is currently in Beijing. She's set to meet Xi Jinping this afternoon. This morning, she met Premier Li, who noted Hong Kong's unfortunate economic situation. He said that China has noted that Hong Kong is not out of he's noted that Hong Kong is not out of its financial dilemmas yet, but it says the economy is currently facing unprecedented and challenging times. But we expect Carrie Lam to update all of us tomorrow, which is Tuesday, when she does potentially a briefing on that visit to Beijing.
Thank you for all of that, Sarah Clark in Hong Kong.